Now, brothers and sisters, we all are the victims of something that happened in this country that violates the Constitution. The Constitution declares that only Congress can have the right to mint money and produce bonds and securities. That's an act of Congress. But in 1913, on the 23rd day of December, a group of international bankers who wanted control of the money of America, with the help of U.S. senators and a U.S. president, passed the Federal Reserve Act, which brought into existence the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, when you say Federal Reserve, you think that federal means it's owned by the government. Federal Express is not the government. And the Federal Reserve is not the U.S. government. It is a group of international bankers, Jews and Gentiles, who are correctly called in the book of Revelation the synagogue of Satan, that have gained control. I want you to hear me. Gain control and set up a central bank in America that is not controlled by the U.S. Congress. And in 1913, the 16th Amendment of the Constitution was ratified, which gives the government the authority to tax the people. Up to 1913, America's debt was controlled by the American citizens, and America was solvent in 1913. She didn't owe nothing. In 1862, Abraham Lincoln imposed income tax on the citizens to pay for the war. 10 years later, 1872, the income tax was repealed. But in 1894, Congress tried to bring it back, and the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional. But in 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act was passed in Congress, the IRS was reenacted because the Federal Reserve was going to put America in debt, and you, the citizen or the so-called citizen, would have to pay for America's debt through taxation. Now follow me. In 1913, Woodrow Wilson was America's president. In 1913, Woodrow Wilson agreed to the Federal Reserve Act, Nelson Aldrich, a senator, and Paul Warburg, and a few of the Jewish families of Europe with Gentiles took over the monetary policies of the United States. In 1917, America got involved in the First World War. In order to fight that war, America had to borrow money, and that's when the debt started. Because when she borrowed money, she had to borrow it from somewhere. Federal Reserve had money printed, you borrow it, you pay the expenditures of war, and all you bought was paper, but this paper has interest attached to it, even though it's based on nothing. Just try to follow me. Don't go to sleep. You've been asleep for 400 years. It's time to wake up today. Now look. After World War I, the debt started climbing. They wanted to draw America into World War II. That was a European thing. Hitler and the boys. But in order for America to get involved in World War II in Europe, she had to borrow more money. The debt started escalating. Then Japan attacked. America borrowed more money. And the more money she borrowed, in 1933, America went off the gold standard. So there was nothing after 1933 to back this. So after that was nothing. And in 1971, it was completed. No more gold. And in the 70s, you could buy an ounce of gold for $35 an ounce. And I was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad one day, and he pulled out a gold coin and put it on the table. And he said, in the future, this would be the medium of exchange. Because the paper will lose its value. Now I want to quickly show how the debt has climbed. After World War II, the Korean War. Every time America went to war, she had to borrow money. There was a time when America would borrow money from her own citizens. We used to buy war bonds. We used to buy treasury bonds and securities that we would keep in a safe for our children. And they would say in 5 years or in 10 years, you can cash this bond in and you will get this plus interest. You remember that? But today, 52% of America's burgeoning debt is owned by foreign governments. So it ain't no more that we could sell bonds to our citizens. We sell bonds to China. We sell bonds and securities to Japan. We sell bonds and securities to Great Britain. Let me show you who owes what. This kind of stuff is classroom stuff. But every time you come to this house, it'll be a classroom. Look, according to this pie graph, Intragovernmental debt, $3,794,000,000,000. The publicly held debt, which is still government responsibility, $2,674,000,000,000. But the publicly held foreigners' debt, rather that America owes, is $2,240,000,000,000. The Japanese have bought up $649 billion of American bonds and securities, plus they have $1.2 trillion in foreign currency reserves. The largest currency reserves in the world is in China. You see why America would jump on Cuba, a communist country 90 miles away, and talk sweet to China, a communist country? Because China got America by the testicles. I use that language because every male in here knows how painful that is. The Chinese in bonds and securities, $354 billion. The British, $249 billion. OPEC, that's the oil producing countries, $102 billion. Korea, $66 billion. Taiwan, $63 billion. The Caribbean banks, $63 billion. Germany, $56 billion. Hong Kong, $55 billion. Brazilians, $54 billion. Canadians, $49 billion. Luxembourg, $38 billion. Mexico, $36 billion. The French, $31 billion. Singapore, $29 billion. Swiss, $27 billion. The Turks, $24 billion. The Swedes, $19 billion. The Irish, $19 billion. The Dutch, $18 billion. The Thais, $17 billion. The Israelis, $17 billion. The Belgians, $15 billion. The Indians, $15 billion. The Italians, $14 billion. The Poles, $13 billion. And all others, $148 billion. Now, when you go and turn on the news and you find out that China has some American ports, you say, well, how did that happen? The Arabs got so much and so much. The Chinese got. Well, I read that even on I-90, on the toll booth area, that has been sold to Spain. Wait. When America owes all this money all over the world, she's the largest borrower of all the nations in the earth almost combined. Look at this now. When you